So a few weeks ago, this balcony behind me was basically a storage zone for empty pots and random junk. Today, it's a full vertical garden wall that cost me under $50, and I'm going to walk you through exactly how I built it, step by step, so you can copy this on your own balcony too. When I first looked at my balcony, I realized I was wasting the most valuable space, the walls and the railing. The floor area is tiny, but the vertical space is huge. So instead of trying to cram a bunch of pots on the ground, I decided to go up the wall and build a vertical garden that gives me more growing space without taking up any extra room to walk. I also set a hard rule for myself. Keep this under $50. No fancy custom racks, no expensive planters, just simple materials that are easy to find almost anywhere. For the structure, I used 2 inexpensive hanging organizers, the kind that are meant for shoes or small storage. Each one has multiple pockets, which makes them perfect for holding small plants or lining with soil. Then I grabbed a couple of basic plastic planters and a few hooks and zip ties to attach everything safely to the railing and wall. For the growing side, I picked up 1 bag of good quality potting mix, some herb and leafy green seeds, and a couple of small starter plants that were on sale. I'm using mostly herbs like basil, parsley, and mint, plus some cool season greens like lettuce and spinach that do really well in cooler weather. All in, with a little bit of smart shopping and using a few things I already had, I kept the total just under $50. Step 1 was clearing and measuring the space. I cleaned off the balcony floor, wiped down the railing, and measured the section of wall where I wanted the vertical garden to hang. This part sounds boring, but it matters because you want to make sure your organizers aren't blocking doors, outlets, or anything else you actually need to use. Once I knew where everything would go, I started hanging the organizers. I used sturdy hooks at the top and then added zip ties along the sides and bottom so they wouldn't swing around in the wind. Next, I made sure every pocket and planter had drainage. This is super important in any climate, but especially if you get rain or snow. You don't want water sitting at the bottom and rotting the roots. So I poked a few small holes in the bottoms of the pockets and planters and added a thin layer of small rocks or pebbles before adding soil. That gives the water somewhere to go and keeps the roots from sitting in a puddle. Before I started planting, I thought about my climate and my sun exposure. My balcony gets a few hours of direct sun and then bright indirect light. It also gets chilly in winter, but not Siberia-level cold. So I picked plants that don't mind cooler temperatures, and that can be protected easily if it suddenly drops below freezing. So, in the bottom row of pockets, I planted herbs I reach for all the time in the kitchen: parsley, mint, and basil. They're close to the ground, easy to water, and a little more protected from wind. And then, in the middle rows, I planted cut-and-come-again greens like lettuce and spinach. I spaced them out so they'd have room to grow, and I'll be able to harvest leaves over and over instead of pulling the whole plant. In the top row, I planted a few faster-growing, tougher plants. Depending on your climate, this could be things like radishes, green onions, or more herbs. I like having the tougher plants up top because they catch more wind and more sun. Then I filled the separate plastic planters with a mix of herbs and small leafy greens and hung them along the railing. These act almost like overflow space for whatever doesn't fit in the pockets. Once everything was planted, I gave the whole setup a really good soak, making sure water was draining out of all the pockets and pots. Quick pause here. If you're into these small balcony projects and budget-friendly garden builds, go ahead and give us a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next ones. I've got more balcony transformations coming, including a super cheap way to add privacy and plants at the same time. Okay, now let's talk about making this winter-friendly without going full greenhouse mode. First, plant choice is your friend. Cool season herbs and greens naturally handle chilly temperatures better. Things like parsley, mint, thyme, lettuce, spinach, arugula, they all do better in cooler weather than, say, basil in a heat wave. Second, think about microclimates. On my balcony, the corner near the wall is always a little warmer and more protected than the edge near the railing. So I put the more sensitive plants in the more protected pockets and use the outer edge for tougher plants. Third, I planned a simple backup plan for really cold nights. I keep a piece of clear plastic or a light frost cloth nearby. If I see the forecast dropping close to freezing, I can quickly drape it over the whole vertical garden like a little temporary tent. Because everything is vertical and close together, it's much easier to protect than a bunch of separate pots spread out all over the place. If you're in a warm climate, You can skip the frost cloth, but the structure still works perfectly as a vertical space saver. For ongoing care, I keep it simple. I check the soil with my fingers every morning. If it's dry about an inch down, I water. In cooler weather, I usually water less often, because the soil doesn't dry out as quickly and the plants are growing slower. In warmer weather, you might need to water more frequently, especially the top row. About every 2 weeks, I feed the plants with a diluted liquid fertilizer. Container plants use up nutrients faster than plants in the ground, so that little boost keeps them producing leaves and new growth. After just a few weeks, the difference is huge. Instead of a blank wall, I have this lush green column of food right outside my door. I can step out in my socks, snip a handful of parsley, grab some lettuce for a sandwich, or cut mint for tea. Visually, it makes the balcony feel cozy, but functionally, it's saving me money on herbs and greens that I used to buy constantly. And I did it without drilling into walls, without buying expensive designer planters, and without going over $50. If you decide to build your own version of this, I'd love to see what you come up with, especially how you adjust it for your climate and plant choices. If you found this helpful and you want more ideas for small space gardens, go ahead and subscribe, and then check out the other balcony transformation videos on my channel for more step-by-step projects you can copy on your own space.